The morning sun beat down on Forward Operating Base Sierra as Captain Maya Johnson stepped out of the military transport vehicle. Her crisp Air Force uniform was perfectly pressed, and her pilot wings caught the light as she adjusted her cap. The base was busy with soldiers moving equipment and vehicles driving back and forth across the dusty ground. Maya had been sent here for a routine inspection of the base's aircraft operations. As one of the Air Force's top F-22 Raptor pilots, she often traveled to different bases to check on procedures and training programs. Today should have been just another normal day of work. She walked toward the main gate, carrying her inspection clipboard and official documents. Her captain's bars were clearly visible on her uniform, and her name tag read Johnson in bold letters. She had earned every piece of that uniform through years of hard work and training. Staff Sergeant Kevin Brooks was standing guard at the gate when he saw Maya approaching. He looked at her with confusion and suspicion. Brooks had been working at the base for 3 years, but he had never seen this woman before. Something about her presence bothered him, though he could not put his finger on what it was. "Hey, you there?" Brooks called out as Maya reached the gate. "Stop right where you are." Maya stopped and looked at him with a calm expression. "Good morning, Sergeant. I'm Captain Johnson, here for the scheduled aircraft inspection." Brooks looked her up and down, his eyes narrowing. "Captain? I don't think so. Where did you get that uniform?" "I'm sorry," Maya asked, genuinely confused by the question. "That uniform. You need to take it off right now," Brooks said, stepping closer to her. "You can't just walk around wearing military clothes if you're not really in the service." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She had faced many challenges in her military career, but this was something new. "Sergeant Brooks," she said, reading his name tag, "I am Captain Maya Johnson, United States Air Force. I'm here on official business." Brooks shook his head firmly. "No way. I know all the officers who come through this base, and you're not one of them. You need to leave right now, and you need to take off that uniform before you get in serious trouble." Other soldiers nearby began to notice the commotion. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hayes was walking past when she heard the raised voices. She stopped and watched from a distance, unsure of what was happening. Major Carlos Rivera also paused his morning routine to observe the situation unfolding at the gate. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out her military identification card. "Here's my ID, Sergeant. You can verify my identity and my orders." Brooks barely glanced at the card. "Anyone can fake an ID these days. I'm not falling for this trick. You need to get out of here before I call the military police." "I am requesting to speak with your commanding officer," Maya said, keeping her voice steady despite the growing frustration she felt inside. "The colonel doesn't have time to deal with people pretending to be soldiers," Brooks replied. "This is your last warning. Take off that uniform and leave this base immediately." Maya stood her ground, her hands clasped behind her back in a military posture. She had spent years training to handle difficult situations, and she was not about to back down now. The hot desert wind blew across the base, stirring up small clouds of dust around them. More soldiers had gathered to watch the confrontation. Some whispered among themselves, wondering what was going on. Others looked uncomfortable, sensing that something was very wrong about the situation, but not sure how to respond. Brooks reached for his radio, preparing to call for backup. Maya watched him carefully, knowing that this situation was about to get much more complicated. She had faced enemy pilots in combat, but somehow this felt like a different kind of battle entirely. Brooks pressed the button on his radio and spoke into it with authority. "This is gate security. I need backup at the main entrance immediately. We have someone impersonating an officer." Within minutes, Sergeant First Class Danny Martinez arrived. At the gate, jogging quickly across the dusty ground. Behind him came Corporal Lisa Thompson, who had been working nearby when she heard the radio call. Both soldiers looked serious as they approached the scene. "What's the situation?" Martinez asked Brooks, looking between him and Maya. "This woman is wearing a stolen uniform and claiming to be a captain," Brooks explained, pointing at Maya. "She's got fake identification and everything. I told her to take off the uniform and leave, but she's refusing to cooperate. Thompson studied Maya carefully. She had to admit that the uniform looked authentic, and the woman wearing it carried herself like a real soldier. But Thompson had learned to trust her fellow soldiers, and if Brooks said something was wrong, then something must be wrong. Maya watched as more people gathered around her. She felt like she was surrounded, but she kept her composure. "I am Captain Maya Johnson," she repeated calmly. "I can provide you with my service record, my orders for this inspection, and any other documentation you require." Martinez took a step forward. "Ma'am, if you really are who you say you are, then you'll understand why we need to be careful. There have been cases of people stealing military uniforms and trying to get onto bases." "I completely understand your caution, Maya," replied. "Security is important, but I'm asking you to properly verify my credentials instead of making assumptions." Brooks crossed his arms over his chest. "Anyone can get fake papers made these days. The uniform looks real too, but that doesn't mean anything. I've seen people buy military clothes online and try to fool people." Lieutenant Colonel Hayes moved closer to the group, finally deciding to get involved. She had been watching from a distance, but the situation seemed to be getting more tense. "What exactly is happening here?" she asked. "We caught someone trying to impersonate an officer," Thompson explained quickly. "She's wearing captain's bars and pilot wings, but we don't believe she's really military." Hayes looked at Maya with interest. The woman did carry herself with military bearing, and her uniform was indeed perfect. But Hayes had learned to be suspicious of unusual situations. "Do you have orders to be here?" she asked Maya. Maya reached into her folder and pulled out official papers. "Yes, ma'am. I have written orders for an aircraft inspection, signed by my commanding officer at Nellis Air Force Base." Brooks shook his head before Hayes could even look at the papers. "Those could be fake too." "These people are getting really good at making false documents." Martinez nodded in agreement. "I've heard about cases where people made fake military IDs that look completely real. Some of them even had the right serial numbers and everything." Major Rivera had been walking toward the commotion when he heard Brooks mention stolen valor. This was a serious accusation that could result in criminal charges. He approached the group with concern on his face. "Are we dealing with a stolen valor case?" Rivera asked Brooks. "That's exactly what this is, sir," Brooks replied confidently. "This woman is wearing a captain's uniform with pilot wings, claiming to be an Air Force officer. But I know she's not legitimate." Maya felt the situation spinning further out of control. She had faced dangerous missions and enemy fire, but this kind of confrontation was different. She was being judged not on her abilities or her record, but on assumptions that had nothing to do with who she really was. "I am requesting immediate contact with Colonel Morrison," Maya said firmly. "This misunderstanding needs to be resolved properly." "The colonel is busy with important matters," Brooks replied. "He doesn't have time to deal with people playing dress-up in military uniforms." The circle of soldiers around Maya grew larger as more personnel stopped to see what was happening. Some looked curious, others seemed uncomfortable with the situation, but none of them stepped forward to help resolve the growing conflict. The sound of heavy boots on gravel made everyone turn around. Colonel Frank Morrison was walking quickly toward the gate, his face showing concern and confusion. He had finally received word about the disturbance and came to see what was causing all the commotion at his base. "What is going on here?" Morrison asked in a loud, clear voice that made everyone stand a little straighter. Brooks stepped forward eagerly. "Sir, we caught someone impersonating an Air Force captain. She's wearing a stolen uniform with pilot wings and trying to get onto the base with fake identification." Morrison looked at the group of soldiers surrounding Maya, then his eyes fell on her. For a moment, his expression was blank. Then his face changed completely. His eyes grew wide with shock and his mouth fell open slightly. "Captain Johnson?" Morrison said, his voice filled with disbelief. Maya stood at attention and saluted properly. "Yes, sir. Captain Maya Johnson reporting as ordered for aircraft inspection." "Duties," Morrison returned the salute quickly, then looked around at all the soldiers who had been questioning her. "Do you people have any idea who this is?" he asked, his voice getting louder with each word. Brooks looked confused. "Sir, she's just someone pretending to be military. We were protecting the base from unauthorized personnel." "Protecting the base?" Morrison repeated, his face turning red with anger. "This is Captain Maya Johnson, one of the finest F-22 Raptor pilots in the entire United States Air Force. She has more combat missions under her belt than half the pilots on this base combined." The soldiers around Maya began to look uncomfortable. Martinez shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Thompson stared at the ground. Hayes felt her stomach drop as she realized the terrible mistake they had all made. Morrison continued, his voice filled with authority. "Captain Johnson has flown over 60 combat missions. She has shot down enemy aircraft and saved the lives of ground troops more times than I can count. She has received the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal with multiple clusters, and the Combat Action Medal." Brooks felt the blood drain from his face. "But sir, how were we supposed to know? She doesn't look like ... Like what, Sergeant?" Morrison interrupted sharply. "She doesn't look like what exactly?" Brooks realized he was about to say something that would get him in even more trouble. He closed his mouth and said nothing. Morrison walked over to Maya and looked at her uniform carefully. Every detail was perfect. Her pilot wings were real and earned through years of difficult training. Her captain's bars represented rank she had achieved through skill and dedication. Her ribbons told the story of a decorated combat veteran. "Captain Johnson," Morrison said, his voice now respectful and apologetic, "I am deeply sorry for this treatment. This should never have happened on my base." Maya remained professional despite everything she had endured. "Thank you, sir. I understand that security is important, but I hope this situation can be resolved quickly so I can complete my assigned duties." Morrison turned to face all the soldiers who had been involved. "Let me make something very clear to all of you. Captain Johnson is here on official orders to inspect our aircraft operations. She's a highly decorated officer who has served her country with honor and distinction." Rivera stepped forward, looking embarrassed. "Sir, we apologize for the misunderstanding. We thought we were doing the right thing." "The right thing," Morrison said slowly, "would have been to properly verify her credentials instead of making assumptions. The right thing would have been to treat a fellow service member with the respect she has earned." Maya watched as the soldiers who had surrounded her began to understand the magnitude of their mistake. She felt no satisfaction in their embarrassment. She only wanted to do her job and move forward. Morrison looked at Maya again. "Captain, what can I do to make this right?" Maya thought for a moment, then spoke with quiet confidence. "Sir, I would like permission to demonstrate exactly why I wear these pilot wings." Colonel Morrison looked at Maya with curiosity and respect. "What do you have in mind, Captain?" Maya stood tall and spoke clearly. "Sir, I would like to take one of your F-22 Raptors up for a training flight. I want to show everyone on this base exactly what these pilot wings represent." Morrison thought about her request for a moment. He knew that Maya was qualified to fly the aircraft, and he also knew that his base personnel needed to see something that would help them understand their mistake. "Permission granted, Captain. I'll have the flight crew prepare our best aircraft immediately." Brooks and the other soldiers looked at each other with growing concern. The idea that this woman could actually fly one of the most advanced fighter jets in the world seemed impossible to them. They had convinced themselves that she was fake, and now their entire understanding was being challenged. Morrison turned to address his personnel. "I want everyone to understand what is about to happen here. Captain Johnson is going to demonstrate her flying abilities in our F-22 Raptor. I suggest you all pay close attention and learn something." Technical Sergeant Amanda Foster received the order to prepare the aircraft. She was the head of the maintenance crew and took great pride in keeping the F-22s in perfect condition. When she heard that a visiting pilot wanted to take one of her planes up, she was excited to see what they could do. "Get Raptor number 7 ready for immediate flight," Foster told her crew. Full fuel load, all systems checked, and make sure everything is perfect. We have a special pilot coming. The maintenance crew worked quickly and efficiently. They checked every system, tested all the controls, and made sure the aircraft was in absolutely perfect condition. Foster personally inspected everything twice to make sure there would be no problems during the flight. Meanwhile, word was spreading throughout the base about what was happening. Soldiers stopped their daily activities and began gathering near the flight line. Some had heard about the confrontation at the gate, while others were simply curious about why there was so much excitement. Private Jake Miller was working on vehicle maintenance when he heard the news. "Did you hear that some captain is going to fly the F-22? He asked his buddy. Specialist Nicole Davis had been in the communications center when the orders came through. "I heard it's the same woman who had that problem at the gate earlier. Apparently she's some kind of hotshot pilot." Maya walked toward the aircraft hangar with Colonel Morrison. She could feel the eyes of many soldiers watching her every move. Some looked curious, others seemed doubtful, and a few appeared genuinely interested in what she might accomplish. "Captain," Morrison said as they walked, "I want you to know that you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Your record speaks for itself." "I appreciate that, sir," Maya replied, "but sometimes actions speak louder than words. These soldiers need to see that excellence comes in many forms." Foster approached them as they reached the hangar. "Captain Johnson, your aircraft is ready. All systems are green, and she's fueled for extended flight operations." Maya looked at the beautiful F-22 Raptor sitting on the tarmac. The aircraft represented the pinnacle of fighter jet technology, and she felt the familiar excitement that came before every flight. This would not be just any ordinary training mission. "Thank you, Sergeant Foster," Maya said. "I promise to take good care of your aircraft." Foster smiled with genuine respect. "I have no doubt about that, ma'am. From what I hear, you know exactly what you're doing." Morrison made an announcement over the base communication system. "All personnel not engaged in essential duties are authorized to observe flight operations from designated safe areas. Today you will witness what real skill and dedication look like." May began her pre-flight preparations, checking every control and system with the precision of an experienced combat pilot. Brooks and his fellow soldiers watched from a distance, still struggling to believe what they were seeing. Maya climbed into the cockpit of the F-22 Raptor and began the startup sequence. The powerful engines came to life with a deep roar that echoed across the entire base. She ran through her pre-flight checklist with perfect precision, just as she had done hundreds of times before in combat zones around the world. The control tower gave her clearance for takeoff. Maya pushed the throttles forward and felt the incredible force of the twin engines pushing her back into her seat. The F-22 accelerated down the runway and lifted off smoothly into the clear blue sky on the ground. Hundreds of soldiers had gathered to watch the
demonstration. Brooks stood with Martinez and Thompson, all three of them staring up at the aircraft with growing amazement. They had never seen anyone handle an F-22 with such smooth control during takeoff. Maya climbed to altitude and then began her demonstration. She started with a high-speed pass over the base, flying so low and fast that the sonic boom rattled windows throughout the facility. The sound was incredible, and everyone on the ground could feel the power of the aircraft as it screamed overhead. Did you see how fast she was going? Miller asked Davis, both of them shielding their eyes from the sun as they watched the aircraft. I've never seen anyone fly like that, Davis replied. Look, she's coming around again. Maya pulled the F-22 into a steep climb, then rolled the aircraft into a perfect barrel roll. The maneuver was so smooth and controlled that it looked effortless. She followed this with a series of sharp turns that showed off both her skill and the aircraft's incredible capabilities. Colonel Morrison watched from the flight line with a smile on his face. He had seen many pilots over the years, but Maya's flying was in a class by itself. Every movement was precise, every maneuver was executed flawlessly. Maya dove toward the ground at high speed, then pulled up at the last possible moment, climbing straight up into the sky. The G-forces that would have knocked out most people She made the difficult maneuvers look like simple tricks. Foster and her maintenance crew watched with professional appreciation. They knew how hard it was to make an F-22 perform like this. The aircraft was incredibly complex, and it took years of training to master all of its systems. Maya was making it look easy. She's not just flying that plane, Foster said to one of her crew members. She's making it dance. Maya performed a series of loops and rolls that left trails of vapor in the sky. She flew inverted for several seconds, showing perfect control even when the aircraft was upside down. Then she executed a maneuver called a cobra, where the aircraft suddenly pitched up to an almost vertical position before smoothly returning to level flight. Brooks felt his mouth hanging open as he watched the demonstration. He had been so certain. The mare was a fake, but no one could fly like this without years of training and experience. Real pilots, especially combat pilots, had a level of skill that could not be copied or pretended. Maya brought the F-22 down for a low-level pass that took her between the base buildings. The precision required for such a maneuver was incredible, and she made it look routine. The roar of the engines echoed off the buildings, and everyone could feel the power of the aircraft as it passed by. For her final maneuver, Maya climbed high into the sky and then dove craft touched down so smoothly that it barely seemed to make contact with the ground dot as Maya taxied back to the hangar. The entire base erupted in cheers and applause. Even the soldiers who had doubted her